This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome into another 3-Maw bonus pod edition. I'm Cole Manbeck, joined as always by former Kansas State wide receiver and partner at Wildcat NIL, Curry Sexton. Unfortunately, we are here today to dissect a loss in Stillwater where Kansas State fell 29-21 in a real disheartening game that I don't think any of us really saw coming. But before we dive in and get into the details of that game, Curry, I do want to remind our listeners, so we got a big golf tournament coming up at Colbert Hills, October 19th, to support the men's basketball team through an NIL event. We've talked about it on here numerous times, but the deadline to enter is approaching quickly, and with the tournament coming up the following week, if anybody is looking to join in last-minute plans and wants to have one heck of a time at Colbert Hills and hang out with the men's basketball team, hang out with a DJ on the course, playing music, walk-up songs, drinks, everything you could want, auctions, etc. One heck of an event going on October 19th. Get a jump start on a football weekend on October 21st against TCU. Get out to Manhattan a couple days early. So Curry, maybe just hit on how things are going with that and how folks find out more information if they want to make some last-minute plans here and enter a team.
Yeah, of course. Obviously it's about 10 days away now, or it is 10 days away now. We're going to have it's going to be a heck of an event. And really for having about 6 weeks of lead time from when Coach Tang and his staff asked us to put this together, until now, it's gone a lot better than I thought it would. We've got a lot of really fun stuff in place. We've got about 20 teams signed up, so it's going to be a great turnout, great support for the men's basketball team. Like we've talked about before, it's going to be a fun day. I mean, we're going to have, obviously, the men's basketball team and Coach Tang are going to be out there. We're going to have the band out there at some point. Willie's going to be out there. I think the cheer squad is coming out. We're going to have a DJ on the course. The golf is going to be fun as always at Colbert Hills. And then we're going to follow that with a cocktail hour, heavy hors d'oeuvres, and a live auction that will include some really cool experience type items, some exclusive experience items that you may not see anywhere else. And so between the golf and the auction, this is going to be a one-of-a-kind event. And if you have an interest in coming out next Thursday, feel free to hop on our website and reach out via our online submission link, or email me at Curry, Curry, at catsnil.com.
And I'm just checking the extended forecast, Curry. 67 for a high, partly sunny. It does not get better than that to be out on a golf course and hanging out in a beautiful Manhattan and getting a start in the college town. That sounds like one fun day. I'm hoping to be out there as well, as we've talked about before. I'm starting to get the itch for K-State basketball too. So it's right around that time. Only the season will only be a couple weeks away. Crazy to think about when we get to that golf tournament on October 19th. My wife and I are planning the trip to Vegas for the USC game to open the season now, and we're under 30 days to K-State basketball kicking off the season. Cannot wait for that, to watch these guys play hoops again. So get out there, get over to catsnil.com and find out more information if you are inclined to put together a team here at the last minute, because you'll have one heck of a time and you'll be supporting the K-State men's basketball team. So looking forward to watching those guys. And now on a sadder topic, Curry, we'll transition to talking about what transpired on Friday night in Stillwater as Kansas State falls 29-21. Curry, I'm curious, just when I watched the first series of the game, K-State took the ball and they go 3 and out, and they did nothing. Like they just looked lethargic. Could you tell at that time like they were going to be in trouble for that game just from watching those 3 plays?
Yeah, I don't know that I thought we were going to be in trouble, but that hopeless feeling started sneaking in a little bit, or started setting in a little bit. Obviously we've taken the ball first I think in the prior 4 games, we'd scored on our first possession in every game. And so we've kind of grown accustomed to that first series, that first 10, 15 play script just being spot on, and this team executing it to perfection and going down and putting points on the board right away. And so for us to come out and go 3 and out, I think absolutely. The team looked, I don't know if lifeless is the right term, but the team looked, they look different than what we've seen in the first 4 games. And so certainly I think from the jump, I did not have a good feeling about how that game was going to turn out.
I was gonna say, did you think they looked flat early on in that game? Really, for the most of the night, to me, it looked just, I don't know, it just did not feel the energy from them.
Yeah, I mean, flat's a great way to put it. The energy levels we're accustomed to seeing from this team and the way that they play, the passion that they play with, the way they fly around on defense, all of that is just, it just wasn't there on Friday. And I think when we finally did start to see that at times in the, in parts of the first half, and then, more in the second half, it was just too little too late.
And we might get into the defense, Curry, a little bit, but at the end of the day, I think the offense is obviously the big storyline here. I mean, the defense holds Oklahoma State to essentially really 19 points on 11 drives. There was the pick six where they got 7 points from that. There was the turnover on downs inside their own 25. So that was a gimme field goal for Oklahoma State there. So you're really talking about 10 points being gifted by the offense to Oklahoma State and really 19 points technically allowed on 11 drives. And we didn't think Oklahoma State's offense was anything to write home about. But I think we all thought, you hold them to 17 points or so, that's an effective performance, especially when you lose Will Lee early on in that game and you're already down Jacob Parrish, as we had found out midweek last week that he was going to be unavailable for the game, and other starting corners. So you're down to your starting corners. Only disappointment to me was K-State couldn't generate any sort of pass rush or get after the quarterback, and I think they only had one QB pressure on 35 drop back attempts in that game against an Alan Bowman-led quarterback, that's not a mobile guy. So maybe we'll talk about the defense a little bit, but I think we want to really shift gears and focus on the offense. And obviously, Curry, just a really frustrating day all around. I don't want to pinpoint it on one single guy. I think there were issues all across the board, but what did you maybe see as some of the most glaring issues with the offensive side of the football?
Yeah, I think the issues that we spotted or highlighted from the first 4 games, they all were present on Friday night. We've talked about how the offensive line has struggled to get on and maintain blocks and to get to the second level and make blocks. And that was the case throughout on Friday night. We've talked about how our receiving group has an apparent inability to get open against man coverage. And that was very, very apparent on Friday night. We've talked about how Will Howard tends to throw the ball into dangerous situations. And obviously that happened a few times on Friday night. And so a lot of the issues that we've highlighted over the course of the last month, all showed up on Friday. And unfortunately it showed up against a team that had its backs against the wall to some degree, and came out ready to fight. And so unfortunately all of our weaknesses were very much on display last Friday in Stillwater.
Well, let's stay on the receivers real quick. So they weren't getting separation. Wasn't thrilled with some of the replays of some of the routes being ran either, and some of the crispness of the routes. Does K-State have the talent at wide receiver to overcome this and get open in man coverage, or is it something where they're going to have to start get creative and scheming guys to get open with how they go about this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think to that second point, I think the answer is absolutely. Do we have enough talent? I don't know. I don't know. All of this comes down to Keegan Johnson in reality. And I don't know if the coaches just did him a huge disservice this offseason with how they hyped him up again and again and again, and made me think, okay, this guy is going to be that first big time, number one weapon that we haven't had since maybe going back to Tyler, if not Byron. I don't know if they did him a huge disservice in doing that, or if we're right in hoping that guy is going to show up. And so I think the answer to the question about talent depends on how Keegan Johnson answers the question of who is Keegan Johnson. Is Keegan Johnson the guy that coaches hyped him up to be? Or is Keegan Johnson the guy that we've seen through now 5 games who is going to play sporadically and is going to make a few plays here and there, but otherwise is going to leave us wanting more? And so I think the answer, again, depends on the answer to that question. With what we have right now, I think we do lack talent. We have, Jaden, RJ, Phil, all quality receivers, but none of them are game changers or game breakers. None of them have, apparently separation ability in a large way. And so, these are guys that are in some ways handicapped. They are role type players. They're not guys meant to be number one receivers. And so without a number one guy, then a defense is going to put guys in the box. They're going to line up man to man, and they're going to say, "I'm going to dare you to get open, and I'm going to dare your quarterback to make a throw into tight coverage." And so far, this group hasn't shown an ability to do that. And so obviously, that's a huge concern and will be a concern moving forward. And I think we're probably going to talk about it. But a larger concern for me, and I'm sure for you as well, is some of the lack of effort that we saw on Friday night, or just the lack of attention to detail that caused some really fatal mistakes.
Yeah, we'll get to that definitely, Curry, when we come back from break here in just a minute. I do want to say the Keegan Johnson thing has been super strange from the onset of the season. And Coach Kleiman talked about in the press conference last week leading up to the game that it was the healthiest that he'd been in a while, and then felt like he was going to be closer to 100%. And then in the first half, he's on the field for maybe 4 or 5 snaps. I just kept looking. I was like, where is Keegan Johnson at? And he ended up playing, I think, the 4th most snaps out of the wide receivers on the team with 31. He played 52 against UCF. So he played 21 less snaps coming off a bye week. It's just, I do not know what's going on. But then when he is out there, like in the second half, okay, he's making a couple plays, looks fine, moving around. I don't know. It's all very strange and bizarre. But we'll get into the effort issue because it bothered me. I'm sure it bothered you being a former player and watching some of the things we saw when we come back from break. First, we got to tell you once again about our friends at Home Field Apparel. I'm actually rocking here a Home Field hoodie. It's just super, super comfortable. I've been really eager to wear this. Actually just arrived last week, but it arrived just in time for the fall-like weather to come. And I got the windows open right now as we record, and it's the perfect hoodie. And this is just one of 40 K-State items that they have online right now at homefieldapparel.com. They've got several different hoodies. They got a sweet lavender bomber jacket that's really cool with the retro Pennant Willie with EMAW written out on the back of the jacket. John Kurtz actually owns one of those on 3MAW as well. Tons of cool retro gear, super soft, super comfortable, as you've heard me say many times before. Jerome Tang rocks a lot of Home Field as well, and basketball season's getting ready as well. So stock up for the tailgate, stock up for basketball season with Home Field gear, and we've got you covered as always with the discount code 3MAW23. Score 15% off your first time order. Go to homefieldapparel.com and enter that discount code when you check out and score 15% off. Again, 3MAW23. Check out homefieldapparel.com and support them as they support us. We're going to talk more K-State football when we come back from break.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network. KC Sports Network.
Okay, Curry, so let's get into the effort issues a little bit. And maybe before we even, because there's some plays that really stood out, and I think everybody's probably seen them, but also, like, you're a former receiver. Like, when you watch these guys, and I know you don't have the all 22, always, so you maybe don't have the full vantage point, but when you watch these guys run routes, does it bother you? Like, do you think that they're lazy in the way that they run some of the routes? I'm not saying it's always, but do you see things that stand out from a route running perspective that you think could be significantly better? Because you played with one of the best route runners ever in Tyler Lockett.
Certainly. And I don't know that lazy is the right word, but I think, there's certainly a lack of attention to detail there that strikes me. And maybe it's because I played for Michael Smith and Andre Coleman, who were, technicians as players and technicians as coaches. But there's certainly a lot. There's certainly a lot to be desired with some of the route running that's happening out there. I think Jaden Jackson has shown an ability to be a pretty strong route runner at times. But I think there are some other instances where some other guys are out there and they're not running a Division I type route and a Power 5 type route. I mean, Oklahoma State is not the best football team in the country, certainly not the best team in the Big 12. But they have capable football players, as we saw on Friday night. And with that, you have to be very, very technical with your route running to get open in man-to-man situations against good football players, guys who are in a lot of ways big-time recruits. And that's just not something that we're doing. And I know that there's been a lot of turnover, from the receiver coaches over the course of the last 5 years. And so I don't know if that's playing into it, but I can certainly tell you that from my playing days, If we would have put on tape some of what's been put on tape over the course of the last 5 games, our playing time would have been significantly impacted, if not completely changed altogether. And so there's certainly a lot of concern for me there, because attention to detail while it's something that you can flip a switch, it's something that's trained into your brain. And so if guys aren't doing it one time, they're not doing it 100 times. And that's something that causes me a lot of concern.
Well, we just talked about that they don't have the supreme athleticism at wide receiver. So all the more you need more attention to detail when you're running these routes to get open. I mean, it's one thing if you're just an elite athlete and you might be able to burn past somebody and use that skill and maybe not have to be as sharp in your route running. But when you got guys out there that are struggling to get open, that attention to detail is all the more important.
I'm a little bit of a testament to that. I mean, I was undersized and under athletic and found a way to get open. And some of it had to deal with just football intelligence, but a lot of it had to deal with, knowing how to run routes, knowing how to attack leverage, and knowing how to get open. And I think I can sit here and say this, but if I found a way to catch 80 balls in one season, if you were sitting next to me looking at me, you'd laugh. Not knowing me, you'd laugh, thinking you didn't catch 80 footballs in the Big 12. And I'm not trying to sit here and hype myself up. What I'm saying is that if I was able to do it, those guys can do it. I can guarantee you. RJ and Phil in particular they don't appear to be a lot different than me from a size and athleticism and speed perspective. And so what it comes down to is being able to be a good football player, to have good football intelligence, and to run good routes. And I have no doubt that those two can do it, because we've seen them do it.
Look, we know you're a humble, modest guy, Curry, but you had a top 10 receiving season in Kansas State football history, over 1,000 yards in 2014, and put up terrific numbers. So it's a great point to put in perspective what we were saying, that in your opinion, K-State has guys that should be able to at the very least get open if they're sharp in the way they go about things and have that attention to detail. Is there anything in particular that stood out that, we talk about effort. Is there something that maybe disappointed you the most that you saw? I'm not asking you to single out a certain guy in particular, but from an effort issue, from something you saw on the offensive side of the football, is there something that bothered you the most when you watched that game unfold against Oklahoma State?
Yeah, there were certainly a number of instances that were concerning for me. I think, one that sticks out, and I'm going to name examples because there were a couple that were huge points in the game. But we get down to I can't remember if it was I believe it was 1st and goal after DJ got ran out of bounds at the 2 or 3 yard line, or no, excuse me. We were down there. We were inside the 10-yard line. Will Howard ran a zone read with Phil Brooks in motion. Will pulled the ball, and he could have walked into the end zone if Phil just got in the way of a guy. It appeared that Phil was under the impression that Will had handed the ball, and so he just stopped. And then the safety who he was, who all he had to do was get in the way of, makes the play. I believe it was the very next play. Center snaps the ball over Will's head on 4th and 8, and then that game gets flipped on its head to some degree. And so that was a huge, that play was a huge concern for me. And I know that you're Phil Brooks, you're carrying out the fake. You think the ball's been handed off, but the problem is you thought the ball was handed off. And if you had just simply stayed in the play as you're taught to do and got in the way of that safety, Will walks into the end zone, and that game may have a different outcome. So that one was hugely concerning for me. Another one is the pick six that Will threw. I think this is probably up for debate, but I don't put that pick on Will at all. That is a scenario where we're rightfully trying to drive the ball at the end of the half to cut into the deficit, to cut into the deficit. And I can't remember what the down and distance was there, but we had somewhere in the range of 8 yards to go, I believe. And so Phil runs what appears to be an out with maybe a potential to convert it to an out and up. He runs the out route, the defensive back is way over the top of the out route. He's sitting basically at the sticks, right at the boundary at the first down yardage. All Will had to do was throwing the ball on the out route. He converts. We move the sticks, and then we probably go down and, we may go down and get some points on the board. But instead, with the defensive back being way over the top, he converts it, and Will throws the out route and goes the other way for 6. And so that isn't necessarily that wouldn't be characterized as a low, but that would probably be characterized as a missed assignment if I had to guess. And that's not something you'd expect from a 6th-year receiver who's playing with a 4th-year quarterback. And so that was something that really frustrated me on Friday night. Make the right play. We don't give up 6 points there. We don't go into the half down big. We may cut into the deficit even more. I think that was, those 2 plays may have been the 2, single biggest plays in the game on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I think Curry, frustrating things are, it's 6-year senior at receiver, and you got a 6-year center and Hayden Gillum that's snapping the ball when Will Howard's making a check. And I know it's on the road, but, these guys have been through this before, and that's a mistake that cannot happen as well. All disappointing. So you thought Phil should have broken that into just a simple out route, right? And not went upfield?
Yeah, my guess is that a lot of routes there's the route has a primary call. So my guess is the primary route there was an out. And if the DB was playing tight, then he had the opportunity to convert it to an out and up. So a lot of times a guy's running a comeback. The comeback has, if you get over the top of the DB, you put your hand up and you go. So just based on where Will threw the ball, the coverage, and the way that Phil ran the route, yes, my thought is that the primary route was an out, and Phil had the option to convert it if the circumstances were right. And in my view, the circumstances weren't right. And I guess, regardless of whether there was an option on the route, the way that the route ran was also a huge problem for me. Phil comes in motion across the set. And then, again, circumstances are very important. Defensive back is playing way off. Instead of attacking his leverage and breaking it off to the out route, which is going to get him to bite if you do want to convert it into the out and up, or get you wide open on the boundary, he just kind of ran a banana route, just kind of slowly jogged into the out and slowly jogged into the up, and no good defensive back in the Big 12 history would bite on that. And so that was also a huge problem for me. And again, I just think you don't expect that. You don't want to see that from your guys who have been around in the program for 6 years.
So that's the route that bothered me the most, Curry. So when I talked about lazy routes, like him just bananing a route, that bothered the heck out of me, because I couldn't tell what the route was technically supposed to be, because it was just kind of just 3/4 speed, didn't round it sharp, didn't make sharp cut. It just bothered me. Look, Phil Brooks leads the team in receiving. He's a veteran guy, and I think he would probably tell you that he's got to do a better job as well. So all these guys, look, the last interception that Will Howard had, Christian Duffy completely misses a block. Look, Will's going to tell you too, he can't be still throwing the out ball, the pass to Brooks or pick 6. That very well not Will Howard's fault, but the first interception, he's throwing a deep safety high right over the top, cannot make that read, even if somebody ran a wrong route, which we think somebody might have ran a wrong route based on what we've been told, but he still cannot make that read there. And then he's just got to throw the ball away and go to 4th down on that one where the tackle just completely misses the block. Christian Duffy didn't get a finger on a guy, and Will had a guy in his face. It's easier said than done, but just an all-around frustrating performance. There's been a lot of sound and social media noise about Avery Johnson, Curry, and I'm just curious from your perspective. We just talked about some of this isn't necessarily Will's fault, although Will tell you he's got to play far better as well. What do you do at quarterback now moving forward? Do you have a shorter leash on Will Howard? Do you just mix Avery more into the fold but still keep Will as your starting guy? I'm curious for your thoughts, because that's been a loud talking point this last several days since that Oklahoma State game.
Yeah, certainly. And I'll say this, I still have a lot of faith in Will. Will's shown us and showed us last year that he can win big ball games. And so I think he's still your guy. I will say, as we talked about earlier, we seem to have a little bit of a talent deficit on the offensive side of the ball. And who is one of the most talented people on our team? Avery Johnson, unquestionably. One of the most athletic, most talented players on the team. And so I think you have to find ways to incorporate him into the offense. We saw at Mizzou where, in some ways we struggled to move the football. In particular, they struggled to run the football. And Avery came in, and I believe he had 6 snaps and averaged 6 yards a carry. Showed an ability to move the football in a game that was where our run game was otherwise getting bottled up. And so I think you ride with Will. Will's your guy, but you have to find ways to get Avery into the game plan. He's way too talented to be sitting over on the sidelines, and he can help us win football games right now.
I'd like to think the thought of his explosiveness with his legs will potentially help open up the receivers as well, because the threat of running Trayshawn Ward, DJ Giddens, and then also having the threat of Avery and the big play explosiveness will help maybe keep defenses a little more honest with what they have to respect and giving up the big play there. Because I thought Oklahoma State's defense, it was a strange way they were defending Kansas State, Curry. There were several times, like, I guess it was in like a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, and I noticed like they had 4 guys in the box. Like they had a 3-man down front. They just had a backer in there, and I was like, just run the ball. And there was one play that really bothered me because it was a 3rd and 4, and I think K-State ran an end-around jet sweep. They ran a jet to Phillip Brooks, and they should have just ran it up the middle. They ran it to where they were outnumbered. So you saw that play. Okay.
Yeah, so we'd run that in around on 3rd and long earlier in the game, and still got the first down. And so I think they went back to it again under similar circumstances. But of course, Oklahoma State adjusted, and then we went back to that same motion again later, and Will pulled the ball and ran for a good chunk play. So yeah, I was also frustrated by that. They did give us some opportunities, but obviously hindsight's 20/20 to some degree. I will say, Avery could do a lot for us. I think he could help us. And based on what we've seen at the receiver position, and our inability to make explosive plays, I would be totally okay seeing some Trey Spivey and some Jace Brown. Add some length and athleticism and some speed out there and see what those cats can do.
Yeah. I think a lot of fans would be eager to see some of those young guys that are hungry and get them out there and see what they can do, to your point. Yeah, I mean, look, I thought K-State, at the end of the day, 21 of their 35 rushing plays, designed running plays, went for 4 yards or more. So 60% of their designed running plays go for 4 yards or more on the ground. You take away that 18-yard team loss on the errant snap, and they average 6.5 yards per carry, 239 yards on 37 rushes in total. But 24 of their 34 passes gained 3 yards or less. That's including incompletion. So just a real lack of explosiveness in the passing game. We'll end on a couple more here, Curry. Any issues with some of the coaching decisions in terms of going for the 4th and 8, not kicking the field goal down 23-7, maybe going for 4th and 3 inside your 25 there, that DJ Giddens was open and Will probably just fired that a little bit too hard for him. But did you take any issues with Coach Kleiman's aggressiveness and think maybe he panicked a little bit in the game flow, or do you support his aggressiveness in those situations?
Certainly. I like being aggressive, but I thought that aggressiveness turned to panic, it was aggressiveness or panic in the face of aggressiveness, was what it was on Friday night. Once we got into that 4th and 8 situation down 16, I thought, kick the football, put the points on the board. So wasn't hugely, I wasn't crazy about that. Was not crazy about going for it 4th and 3 inside our own 30. Obviously, that turned around to them putting points right back up on the board. I think there's a more legitimate debate around going for 2. Yep. But under the circumstances, with us having been down, clawed back, I thought it took a little bit of momentum away from us. I thought it gave them some of the momentum back. When you have fought back and got it within 8. I don't love the idea of putting your team in that situation where they know, okay, we got to go score again, and once we do score, we got to go convert it. We got to go convert 2 just to send this thing to overtime. So even before we didn't convert, although we should have. I wasn't a fan of that call as well. And so I do think we were maybe a little bit too aggressive.
Yeah, so on the 2-point conversion, my thought process was also like the offense had been struggling all night. It had been a grind, and you finally are getting some momentum on your side. Just kick the extra point and don't derail that momentum. I can see an argument, though, for going for 2. We talked about it on the post-game show. Like, they went for 2 earlier. They got it. They didn't get this one, so fans are a little more upset because it didn't end up working. And I at the time, I was not a fan of it. I backed off of that a little bit. I backed off a little. I'm like, oh, I can go either way, but I still probably would have leaned toward just kicking the extra point, cutting it to 7, and keeping the momentum and the game pressure on Oklahoma State. So
yeah, and then if you cut it to 7 and you go down and you score that touchdown to get within 1, then think about it. Then think about, hey, do we go for 2 and try to win this thing and steal this game on the road? But I thought it gave them some of the momentum back that we had otherwise gained. I know the Green Bay Packers did it a few weeks ago when they came back from a big deficit against the Saints, and it worked out in their favor. I'm sure there's a million arguments on both sides, but I just thought that we had fought too hard to take points off the board, and we took that point off the board. We took points off the board when we went for it on 4th and 8 and fumbled or had a bad snap. And other instances where we arguably took points off the board. And so I thought we left a lot of points on the board Saturday night or Friday night. And that was something that frustrated me when the clock hit 0.
Well, you start adding it up, Curry, and you're talking about you give them 3 points because you go for the 4th and 3, you don't get it. They get 3 out of that. You don't kick the field goal. You end up turning it over on downs. So that's 6 points. You go for 2 and you don't get that. So you're talking about a lot of points being left or being given away to Oklahoma State in what was a 1-possession game at the end of the day. Unfortunately, I think we all agree, probably shouldn't have came down to a 1-possession game. If K-State plays crisp, sharp football, it probably doesn't come down to it. So let's end on this. K-State plays at Texas Tech on Saturday in Lubbock. Just what is the significance of this game to Kansas State's season? Is this a must-win type game for Kansas State?
It's hard. I think so. Just to keep, because if you look at our schedule sets up nicely after this weekend. I mean, you come home to 2 teams who are struggling, and then obviously big one in Texas, and then you finish out with Baylor and Iowa State at home and a tough one against KU on the road. But the schedule sets up nicely after this one. But if you lose, you fall to 3-3. I think you lose the fan base a little bit. And so I think in a lot of ways, this is a really, really important football game.
Well, hopefully Kansas State can get things done in Lubbock. It's a huge game for both teams. Texas Tech's feeling good about themselves after winning the last couple and getting off to 2-1 start in league play. Everything's back on the table for the Red Raiders. They've kind of recalibrated and reset. It's a night kick. Unfortunately, another blackout. It's becoming a thing when Kansas State comes to town, so it's not going to be easy by any means. But if Kansas State can win this game, I had K-State losing at Tech to start the season in the preseason projections. I had them going 2-0 to start and then losing to Tech. You can kind of look at it as if you win this game, you kind of are where I thought they'd be sans the Missouri loss. I just didn't think I thought it'd be flip-flop. I thought they'd win against Oklahoma State and lose to Tech. So huge game. Hopefully Kansas State comes down there. We really want to see a really inspired performance and just some sharp football. And hopefully the Cats get after it and come back to Manhattan with a little 2-game homestand and a chance to get to 6-2 overall if they're able to win against Tech and then win the next couple at home. So as always, thanks again to Curry Sexton for doing this on the 3-Maw bonus pod. Thank you again for listening to this episode. For Curry Sexton, for Nick Springer behind the scenes producing this show, I'm Cole Manbeck. Thank you for listening to another episode of 3-Maw.